there's lots of different tools that you can use to make sourdough bread. There's lots of tools you can use to make anything. And so today I'm going to show you all of my absolute favorite tools to use when I'm baking sourdough. And we can talk about like other alternatives, because I know that not everyone is in a position to run out and spend a whole bunch of money to buy new things. So I'm going to show you kind of the more expensive versus the least expensive, and you can choose which one makes sense for you in your home. So let's get started. I'm going to show you all of my favorite sourdough tools. So let's start first and foremost with what to keep your sourdough starter in, because obviously your starter is the most important part of the whole process. It is the star of the show. So I like to use pottery. These are our sourdough crocks that we have, and I will link them below. They're so beautiful on your counter, but the reason that I like using pottery is because it maintains the temperature of your starter more evenly and for a longer period of time. So I can kind of get away with feeding my starter every other day in the winter time. So you can see here, my starter has kind of risen up and fallen back down, and we have these starter crocks available in like a bit of a larger size. So I will link my tutorial on how I feed my starter. I like to have 2 jars so I can alternate back and forth. So I'm always feeding into a clean jar, but I prefer to use pottery. This is what they would have used hundreds of years ago, is clay crocks to keep their sourdough starters in, and it's just such a nice even temperature when you're maintaining your sourdough starter by keeping it on the counter. And then also you can stick these in the fridge, no problem. Obviously, I know that buying brand new pottery isn't an option for everyone. So if you can't get a crock, just a simple mason jar works fine. But what I will caution is I really like to have the wide mouth. And the reason for that is because when you're scooping things out of it or when you're cleaning it, I don't like to have that lip on the inside there. So try to find a jar with like the nice wide lid so that you can pour right from it. You have to be really mindful that there are products, really pretty sourdough containers on the market that do have lead in them. So these pottery crocks, as well as if you're buying or going out and grabbing a mason jar, these are 100% lead free and have been tested and do not have any lead in them at all. So that's really important, obviously, because you're fermenting food inside of these and storing them in them day in and day out. So it's important to choose something that doesn't have any lead in it. So either a pottery sourdough crock, or you can get a nice glass mason jar with a wide mouth. And if you've watched my starter tutorial as well as my leaven tutorial, you know that you need a larger vessel to make your leaven in. So I only have just my large leaven crock here, but you can get like a liter sized like pickle jar, like a large pickle jar. You can just put it in that as well. So you have a crock that can kind of match, or you can use a mason jar and then a large pickle jar. Or if you can get like a large wide mouthed mason jar, that would be great too. But you need a larger vessel, because when you're feeding your sourdough starter, you're always feeding a small amount into your small jar. And then when you want to go and make your bread, you are going to need a larger vessel to make your leaven in, and that's going to act as your yeast when you're making your sourdough. And I have tutorials on how to make those, but these are the vessels that you would use in order to do that. So I will also link that, or if you can, again, find a nice big jar that's about a liter in size to make your leaven. So the next thing you're gonna need is a bowl to make your dough in. And so you can use any type of bowl. You can use stainless steel, you can use plastic if you wanted, just a glass bowl. I, again, love to use pottery. This is one that I bought locally, and it is the perfect size for making my master recipe if I'm just making 2 loaves. And I love how sturdy it is. I like that it's a nice thick edge, but again, you can use any type of bowl to mix up your dough in. I like to go and splurge on the things that I use all the time. So I use my sourdough crock and my leaven crock all the time, and then I use this bowl almost every single day, and so I love it. So if you can find yourself a nice beautiful pottery bowl, or any type of bowl will do for that. So next I have our Banneton baskets. So if you're going to kind of use like a mason jar and then maybe like a bowl that you already have at home, then that's great, but I highly recommend buying Banneton baskets, and I'm going to show you some different options for these. So the paper pulp ones are my absolute favorite. These are from Rose Hill Sourdough. I will link him below. These, for me, I find keeps the shape of your bread better. They breathe, and so it kind of like dries out the exterior of the loaf so that when you dump it out onto to score it, it really holds its shape. So paper pulp is for me the way to go. I absolutely love these, but they are a little more expensive, and so they're a little bit of an investment. I have a couple of them. If you're making the master recipe, you only need 2. So that's just something to keep in mind. But if it's something that you're not in the market for, or it's not feasible for you at this time, you can also do the regular Bannetons that you can get on Amazon. And so these have a liner that come with it. These ones are round, but if you're getting baskets off of Amazon, you want to make sure you get the 7-inch. So 7-inch works perfect for all of my bread recipes. And if you're doing an oval, you're getting a 10-inch. So I have my liner in there, but this is a 10-inch oval or a 7-inch round or boule, and then your paper pulp oval. So those are the 3 options for your Banneton baskets. You can certainly get these ones without the liner. I really like to have the liner in there because you can take them out and you can wash them, and it makes it so that your bread really doesn't stick. With these ones, as long as you flour it well, it really doesn't stick, which is another reason why I really like the paper pulp. So I will give you some options below. We're in Canada, so I use Amazon.ca, but if you just look on Amazon, type in Banneton baskets 7-inch round or 10-inch oval, and I'll link my Rose Hill paper pulp baskets below. So let's talk about scoring your sourdough loaves. These are the items that I like to have on hand when I'm getting ready to score. So these are just a pair of hair scissors that I bought specifically for bread. I like using these rather than kitchen shears just because they're a lot more dainty, and they're like the perfect holes for your finger and your thumb. And then obviously my bread lames, and so I will also link these. These both came from the Wire Monkey shop, and I've tried a lot of different bread lames from a lot of different places, and these ones are by far the very best ones I've ever used, specifically this one. So I think this is called their UFO lame, but I will link their shop. I can't recommend it enough. Again, I've used so many of these, and I keep coming back to this one time and time again. It's very easy. You just have to twist this, and the razor comes right out, and you can replace it all the time. And so and the way that you hold it just to score designs, and it's just so simple, and there's not much to it, and I really like that. So this one's made out of wood, so obviously you're not going to wash it or do anything like that. You can retract so theirs works in a way that you can retract the blade, and you can store it just as that. I don't like doing that just because it's kind of annoying, and then you have to find where it kind of comes back out again. So I bought this little leather pouch that they also have on their websites, and I keep it in this so that no one ever has to cut themselves on the blade. So Wire Monkey shop, that is the very best bread lame that I've ever found. And then this one's also from them. I don't use this one as much, but if I'm just doing a quick score down the lengthways of my sourdough, this one works really nicely. But if you're only gonna buy one, definitely buy this one. It's the very best one. You can do everything with it. You can do the deep expansion scores, you can do your intricate designs, like everything. And then this one is really only for the deep expansion scores. I like to have this pastry brush because when you're flouring the top of your loaves before you score them, oftentimes flour will get all around the loaf, and I like to just be able to kind of brush it off because the flour will burn in the oven. So just a cheap pastry brush, you can get them on Amazon or anywhere, and then bread lames and scissors. So those are my scoring tools that I like to have on hand for my bread. So next I want to talk about baking your bread. And so when your bread goes into your Dutch oven, I'm going to show you these in a minute, but when your bread goes into your Dutch oven, it usually has to have something underneath of it. So I used to use parchment paper. I now use these. I've been using these for a couple of years now. We also sell them in our shop. but they are a silicone bread mat. And what's so beautiful about these is that you can use them over and over and over and over again. You don't have to worry about buying parchment paper or throwing out parchment paper all the time. So they come in a pack of 2, which is perfect for the master recipe because the master recipe is 2 loaves. And basically your loaf just comes right out on top of the bread mat, and we score it, and then all you have to do is just lift up the edges and put it into your Banneton basket. And so it's just wonderful. And then, put it into your Dutch oven. And when it comes out of the oven, same thing. These will cool off quite a bit faster than the rest of it. So you can grab onto these and lift it right out of your Dutch oven and put it onto your cooling rack. They are a wonderful investment to have. If you're not in the market to buy these, then you can certainly just use parchment paper. I like to cut like a big square of parchment paper that I can lift the corners of and put it into my Dutch oven, and that works just wonderfully as well. But I will also note with the silicone, if you're having issues with your bottoms of your loaves burning, I find that this tends to help mitigate that a little bit more than the parchment paper. So that's just something to keep in mind. I find my loaves burn a lot less when I'm using my silicone mat. Okay, so we went over what to bake on, but let's talk about what to bake in. So this is a Dutch oven. This is the Lodge dual pot pan. So you can like take it apart. You can use this as a frying pan. You can use this as a frying pan as well, or it can bake with the cover on just like this, or you can take it off. And how I like to bake mine, preferably, is upside down. And this is why I love this combo cooker the most. And honestly, it's so economical. It's under $100. And actually, I really like the way that this one works, because when you're putting your loaf, for example, in here, you're just setting it on the bottom, or if you need to slide it in, you can slide it into the bottom, and then you're putting the cover on. And what I like about that is then it isn't really baking into the sides as much. It's actually getting its own oven rise. So I like a flat bottom and then a rounded top, and it just fits right on there like that. And I kind of off center it when it's in the oven so that I can come in and I can lift it off easily. So this is the one that I love the best. I mean, obviously, if you have a Le Creuset or you have one of the more expensive Dutch ovens, those work really nicely as well. But for the purpose of bread, I mean, I like an enameled cast iron Dutch oven for things like if I'm roasting something or soups or whatever, because it doesn't take on any of the taste of the cast iron. But for bread, you really don't have to worry about that because it's dry and it's really not touching the sides of this at all. It's just setting on the bottom, and then you're placing the top on like this. So obviously you're baking your bread half the time with the cover on, so it creates and generates steam inside of the Dutch oven, and then you're coming in halfway through the bake, you're taking off that cover. And that's the other thing I really like, is then your loaf is going to bake for the second half with these tabs hanging over the side. So when it's finished baking, you take this out of the oven, and these will cool down really quickly, and then you can just lift those up and lift your loaf right out of your Dutch oven and place it onto your cooling rack. So this one, again, dual pot pan from Lodge. It's a 10.25 inch. I will put that in the caption below. You'll have to kind of look up on Amazon. I think I got this one on Amazon or wherever you can buy your Lodge cast irons, and it is the 10.25 inch dual pot pan. The other one that I have is, I believe this is a 5-quart. It's a large pot. I don't like this one as much, and I will tell you why. I still bake it upside down just like this, but if I'm gonna have something so big on the top without a handle on the side, I would like there to be a handle on the top, and this one doesn't have that, so I have to kind of lift it like this, which is fine. I've had probably both of these for like 15 years, and you know, they still work great. I still use them several times a week, and you know, either one works fine. So this is, I believe, the 5-quart, and then the dual pot pan. So those are all of my favorite tools that I love to use when I'm making sourdough. There is so many different economical ways to make this work for you and your family. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and buy everything all at once. You can start with just simple jars and parchment paper and an inexpensive Dutch oven, and those are things, and a regular old bowl that you have sitting in your cupboard. You do not have to have a whole bunch of fancy things to make sourdough bread. Anybody can make sourdough bread with all the things that they probably already have in their kitchen. These are just some of the things that I love to use that I've accumulated over the years, and you can kind of take your time picking away at things that you think will kind of help advance your sourdough. And so I have found that as I've accumulated all of these different items, they've kind of made my bread process more enjoyable, and I really love making sourdough using all of these things. So make sure that you subscribe to our channel if you're interested in more tutorials for sourdough bread, and Merry Christmas.